Happy Friday, everyone. We are heading into, or it's already started, but round 9. I am Warnie, coach of the Warn Dogs, and this is Drew Jones.
Yeah, coach of the Mountain Goats. Hello, mates. And, of course, host of Goat Fantasy. And, geez, it's been busy the last couple of days. There's been a bit going on.
It has been a very, very busy time, and you're even busier because you're on the road. You're driving down to G-Town.
Yes, my normal compadre, Tony, who you've met, of course,
Yep.
and loves a beer more than even you guys, I think, is in Byron on his 60th birthday jaunt. So I'm with Toby in the car, who's graciously agreed to let me talk shit for a while.
Does he like fantasy? Does he like fantasy footy more than Esky?
Well, yeah, I mean, Esky's 0, so I guess it couldn't be any less.
Rightio. Well, let's go in. It has been a big week. We'll get to probably a lot of those issues as we go through the team. So let's have a quick chat about last night. Cracking game. The Wharfie time was on, and we saw Luke Jackson, who has just been the pick of the rucks, really. Like, if you want to put it down to what we all said in the pre-season, that the rules would suit him. So he's busted out a 128, and if you did go the VC, which I did suggest last night on our live stream, and Calvin shot it down because no ruck has gone over 100 against the Hawks. Well, it's happened now.
Yeah, well, he's built different, no doubt about that. He's playing amazing footy. I think he was in a lot of our teams initially, wasn't he? And then we sort of probably deferred to English once the McAndrew stuff became real. But yeah, I've rolled with him 2 weeks in a row as VC in Supercoach, and he's rewarded pretty handsomely with a 143 and now 141 and a great score in fantasy last night. So yeah, I mean, anyone who's got him, well done. One of my best mates who's in the top 700, he started with LJ.
Nice.
And that's just been it's been an absolute key to unlocking the season, hasn't it?
Well, these last 5 weeks, so he's gone 131, 103, 135, 129, 128. So up there with the best, if not the best, as you're going along. So huge there. Sarong got a ton. And then it's probably, you don't have heaps to write home about, to be honest, out of this game where Murphy Reid is 65, which I guess you take. But you know that's not exactly what you want because some of your rookies are doing those things. Shea Bolton doing that as well. Then looking at the Hawks, Carl Amon's in a little patch of form too at the moment. So he had a 114. He's knocking out some tons at the moment. But probably the name that jumped out at me was Connor McDonald, a 47. So a little bit disappointing there.
Yeah, yuck. I reckon Fremantle were pretty aware of the kind of effect that he could have, and he's been a real spark plug for the Hawks in their front half. So I'm not surprised that they put a bit of extra work in him. And
they didn't allow him to mark. That's huge.
Yeah, and I think ultimately when we look at this game, it's 2v3 on the ladder. Like, it was basically a finals-like game. So you can't judge your players too harshly if they haven't, smashed a big score. Like, Amon was carrying a knee for a few weeks, and now he seems like having that game off a couple of weeks ago has sort of freed him up a bit. He looks in much better nick. Yep. He got maybe a bit more of a lick of the ice cream, and Impey, who'd been the guy the last few weeks, got a bit less. And then Bodie Ryan didn't really get involved that much down back. I actually thought he didn't play too bad.
Yeah.
But he didn't look like a natural fantasy accumulator, did he?
Yeah, they've got a bit to play with down there as well, don't they, the Hawks? Like, he's probably just pecking order where he might be sitting at the moment for that. All right, let's get into the weekend ahead. We've got tonight, looking forward to the double header again tonight. We've got Brisbane and Carlton playing the 7:30 game at the Gabba. So Joyce is in and Ty Gallop's out with a concussion. The Blues have omitted Reedy and Matt Cottrell. George Hewitt is back in, so we'll see him back into the guts. And Billy Wilson's also in for the Blues.
Yeah, I think handle George Hewitt with care. If you've got him in draft, just because Bossy was talking about how they've sort of been trying to train him up in a couple of different roles, and potentially he might play a bit more half forward, or they might have a job for him somewhere. So maybe just the emergency on him tonight. I don't think he's going to come back and smash you a ton. They kind of had to bring him back. Like, he's been getting 30 disposals a week for a month in the VFL. They had to do something. But yeah, I think, I guess from a Carlton perspective, Warnie, Newman's been a talking point this week.
Yeah.
I think you've opted against him, and understandably, because this is like a tough matchup for him, isn't it?
Well, I think I will be going for him now as well, just because of the dollars.
Okay.
I sort of have the choice. Comes down to, here's the dog show, but I've got. I think Sharp's my man as the rookie to grab because I've already got Cumming. So to do that, I have to take Newman over Dale, who also plays tonight. I want Dale more. I definitely want that, like if I'm given the choice, but the dollars don't add up. So Newman, are you happy with being able to pick him this week? Like, are we... it's a harder matchup, obviously, than what we've seen the last couple, but are we just confident enough that he can be that, the 80s, probably into the 90s, like maybe not be the super value, but should do his job at that price?
I just think he's a good pick, full stop. I just don't think he's a great pick this week.
Yep.
So if you're willing to cop potentially a slightly lower score against the Lions, then you'll probably bear the fruits of it going forward because he's clearly value. Yeah, it's a tough one. Like, I'm probably more in the camp that Dale is a risk because we just don't know what it looks like with Butterick back in the team. I would, if Bailey Dale had a solid score this week and looked good, I'd be more inclined to launch on him next week, just knowing what it looks like with Butterick back in the team.
Yeah, it's fair.
So, look, either way, like there's some risk involved because as everyone has risk at this price. But the evidence is that this season with Butterick in the team, Bailey Dale averages like 70. So, I think you can't go wrong with Newman as a longer-term play.
Hugh McCluggage is the talk here, and I think he's an easy pick. Is he a trap or a treat for you?
I can't believe that Calvin... Actually, no, I can believe it. And I actually think it's quite good. It's actually quite good banter, to be honest. I think it's quite well played by him. His time on ground was always going to go up last week. Yeah. So the fact that he was put down as a trap was probably a bit... That was incorrect. So he's corrected it this week, and I think he's the value player right now in the whole comp, if you want to go there.
Yep.
And you'd think there are lots of mouths to feed for the Lions, but you'd think he's a pretty safe, 95 to 100.
806K, he has got the Blues, obviously, in this game, so that is handy. I think he's just a pretty no-brainer pick now that he's $2,000 cheaper than when he was the trap the week before. I think I've got no problem with him calling him a trap there, but don't go and freaking pick him yourself, mate. That's the thing. That's deceptive, and he can have the title of that. All right, let's move into the other Friday night game, and that is the Port Adelaide and Western Bulldogs game. So that's an 8:10 Eastern start. So Watkinson in, and my mate Todd Marshall has been omitted into the Dogs, so we have got 4 changes there. So Latham Vandermeer is out injured, but we've got Davidson, Emmett, Dolan all omitted. Coming in, as we mentioned there, Connor Butterick. So after that, Hammy, Cooper Hines, Oscar Baker, and Lachlan Smith all come into the team there to play tonight. So Todd Marshall, we just start there. This is just our excuse to trade him out, being probably one of the most frustrating picks of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the theory behind the pick made sense. It's just been a weird season for him with illness and a couple of ankle injuries and all sorts going on. Probably if you had to ask me at the start of the year, is it a smart idea to pick Todd Marshall given his history? I would say, probably avoid. But I mean, there wasn't really any good options.
No.
At F7 and F8. If you started with Cook, then that's a win. But it's been a hard year for forwards. So yeah, I would say you probably should have known better, given you're up to your 20th season.
Exactly. In this game too, then we've got the Bailey Dale thing. We sort of covered that off there. I'm still okay with picking him. I think I like him as an option because I think he's probably got he's got the chops there. But yeah, the good call of just maybe seeing this week, it should be a decent matchup for him, so you shouldn't go too wrong. Would you consider Miles Bergman at all because he's sort of knocked out a couple of tons on the trot?
Oh, I love that pick because he's so freaking cheap. Yeah, I mean, looking back on, just using you guys for example, getting Timu Bats, because of how cheap he was, that was ill advised.
Yes.
I said it to everyone that week. I was like, don't fall into this trap. He's not a good player.
Yeah.
He played Mitch Edwards on a small ground and got 10 tackles, but no one listened. Certainly not Roy.
No.
But
Roy gets himself into these holes at times.
this pick actually makes sense. He's gone back to the role that we know that he can score well in, and hasn't been thrown around the last 2 weeks. And that's the big issue with Bergman has been when he gets thrown around the ground, that's when his scoring drops off. And of course, he's also been carrying a foot injury, which is now over.
And his run too, Dogs are a good matchup defender-wise, should be all right. Then he's got the Suns, and we've seen what people have done against the Suns as well. We saw obviously Whitfield last week, etc. And then the Blues, then the Eagles. So you're sort of getting a nice little run through into these buys as well from him if you wanted to go there. And at that 625k, it's one of those ones where I go, oh, should I just save 200k, which would actually help me upgrade somewhere else instead of going Nick Newman? But I don't think I will. But it's one of those things where it could be, especially in this rookie time that we are shuffling these guys out, that the straight swaps. So if you're saying Jai Sarong, who's out with his hamstring tightness this week, it's basically a straight swap across to him.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if I can convince you in the next 10 minutes to do that trade. I mean, how many times this season have you said, oh, geez, I should have just gone the cheaper option?
Yeah, we do say that. And then that's looking forward. I think I've been a little bit too much 1 week at a time. Having that cash will allow you to do some of those things here as well. But, tonight, I hate making decisions way too early. I don't mind Butters as a VC option if you needed to look there tonight as well. So that's probably something that could be a look. And then Bont is the man, under $1 million. What's your read and all of that? Because he's got that knee, but then Bevo's talked about the heel issue this week. So he'll just be mostly managed, do you think, during the week? Do you think they'll give him a rest?
Yeah, I think the consensus I've got from the Bulldogs is that they would love to find a way to give him a week off. But as it stands, having lost 4 in a row,
they can't.
The captain. But he, as if Bont is going to walk into Bevo's office and be like, "Yeah, mate, I might just sit this one out."
Yeah,
that's never going to happen. So the hard thing for Dogs is I think they've got the last bye, don't they? They don't get the chance to rest him early in the bye rounds.
So they're the round 16 bye. Yep.
I think this is if you have your hold and hope for the best, but I don't think we can buy into Bont right now, knowing that he's got carrying 2 injuries and there's the threat of arrest hanging over his head.
Even to the point, this is their only travel game there as well. The rest are all at Marvel or the MCG up until that bye. So he's got a pretty good run at home, which is a handy thing in that. All right, Saturday, North Melbourne are playing against the Sydney Swans. Constanti Wardlaw's back in, and also Will Dawson. Doveston's been omitted with Aidan Core and Tom Powers out injured for the Swans. So we do see Jai Sarong, that hamstring tightness, he's out. Charlie Curnow too is missing, with Cunningham and McLean back in. So Sarong, I guess, is the big one that we've all got, and we're probably all looking at which rookies that we are trading out, and they're all on the block. Does it just make the decision easy now?
Well, you can look at it both ways, can't you? There's a chance he's only out for a week.
Yep.
If you've got Grill, most likely he's going to drop cash this week.
Yeah.
So if you need the Sarong money to get to where you need to go, then I think yes, it makes sense. But someone like me, where I'm looking at Sarong sitting there, I'm like, well, if he comes back next week, he'll go into my team, he'll play as an on-field player, whereas Grill won't. So I'm like, well, if I get rid of Grill now, I don't lose the cash, and then I've got the option next week. I could take Sarong to potentially a really good primo next week, or I could still roll him out and play him as a relatively trusted 60 on the field. So I think there's no rush to trade Sarong. I think it all depends on where you're trying to get to.
Yeah, and it's a bit of an unknown too, but it does sound like it's on that sort of minor end as well. When they do whack the tightness onto the end of the hamstring, at least you know that it's a shorter one than a longer one. And he's been good, and I think they'd want him in the side. That's the other part of that too at the moment. Blamires holds his spot there for the Roos after being sort of laid in last week when Wardlaw was named out. Jai Simpkin, what's his plan going to be? Do you reckon it is going to an Isaac Heaney, or does he have a look at some different things? And obviously Finn O'Sullivan, who was doing some stuff, probably hasn't been as much lately.
Yeah, I would think that Foster's a better physical matchup for Heaney. But Simpkin will definitely do something. And then I think I actually quite like what Clarko's done. I think it's been quite clever the way that he's used Simpkin, because he's got a guy that can get some ball going the other way. He's still got enough, like he's got the physical traits to do the run with roll, and he can do stuff on the back end. You'd think then James Jordan has a look at Sheasel or LDU, like it's going to be an interesting tactical battle. I think this would be actually going to be a reasonable game.
Yeah, yep, should be. What might be a reasonable game, GWS and the Bombers. The Giants have lost through injury O'Halloran, Aaliyah, Hogan and Angwin. They're bringing Gruzeski, Riccardi, Hannaford and McMullen. The Bombers have 6 changes, so through injury they've lost Caldwell with that ankle, so he hasn't got up from that. Sardell Hawley, and then you've got Mackay, who has been omitted, as well as the big Condog, Gresham and Tom Edwards coming back in. So Parrish, after being managed last week, Redmond's back, which will be nice for the defence. Nick Bryan, we get to see him in the ruck for the first time, although I think it'll be quite managed minutes there. So Blackie still stays in, but he'll just play as a defender now. Perkins is there, and also Archer May. So a lot of changes here for both sides. Probably the change that we didn't see, though, was Lockie Whitfield. Bit of sauce there, Drew.
Yeah, so I reckon it was about, just taking behind the curtain, it was about 4 o'clock yesterday, Arvo. That was sort of the next thing on my list in terms of work, was just to go through the Adam Kingsley presser, and I watched a bit of the training feed. And just at the end, before the presser, the camo in Sydney got these shots of Whitfield icing up his Achilles. And I was like, hang on. Like, this is something. So then I just sort of took a fine-tooth comb through the entirety of the session, and eventually found that vision, which I sent to you and eventually put on socials, of Lockie sort of testing out that knock that he got. So, yeah, I spoke to the club, and they said he got a kick to his Achilles, and essentially there was a match committee meeting after training, and there was no flags raised that Whitfield wouldn't be able to play. So if we take GWS at their word, they expect Whitfield to play. That's the line. And no one actually asked about it in the presser, so I assume that the guys that went to training did not actually watch training, and had no idea what was going on, because it wasn't even brought up as an issue, which is why I got no coverage, because it wasn't covered in the presser itself.
So the question is it enough that if you were bringing him in this week, would that turn you off?
Yeah, it would turn me off. But
we've had plenty of history with Whitfield too over the time. There were always some funny different things for him as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's the right guy long term, and he's got a good buy. But it would be enough to me to look at the dollars you're paying for him, and it would make me balk at it a bit for sure. It's a complex one.
A simple pivot to Lockie Ash if you didn't have him, because that midfield role, it sounds like that's sticking for the short term anyway, because Kingsley was asked about that and didn't say like it was a permanent move, but it sounds like they're going to stick with it.
Yeah, the sense I get is that Toby Green's sort of tiring a bit with that midfield role, so they're sort of going to transition him into the forward line a bit and use Ash in the midfield, at least for a while. I think that would be enough for me to flick to Ash, I would say. And I think just something I wanted to note, like I didn't post that on my socials and whatnot because I felt like the right thing to do was to speak to the club directly and to get like a proper assessment, and I didn't want to raise panic without having the full story. But I did want to send it to you to show to Cal, because I knew that Whitfield was high on his captains, and I thought that would be quite funny.
It was good, and to bring it up to him when he's actually dropped him at number 2 on there, it did have him rattled, which is exactly what we want in this game. That's what it's all about.
Did he throw something? Like, he seemed like he may have dirtied up.
He threw his clipboard, in his old man clipboard that he does his captain notes on. So
very good.
Anyway, we'll see where that goes. Hopefully he's all good. I'm sure he will be. We take them at their word, I think, for that, and every player cops some sort of little knocking thing. It's just Lockie Whitfield is just one of those guys that we see that from. Bombers, just a couple of quick ones there. So Dyson Sharp is probably most likely my in there, I reckon, because I do have Cummings. So he's in that mix. Having a look at that, you have your little change there with Parrish coming back in with Caldwell out. So that's sort of your straight swap in that one. We did see a bump in CBAs for Sully Roby, but that sort of happened after the Caldwell injury. So I would say that Sharp's probably still that fourth banana, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's a good week to go Sharp because Caldwell's out. So, if Jai's ankle settles and he comes back next week, and obviously there's probably going to be a slight change to the balance of the way they hand out the midfield minutes, and that probably works against Sharp. But I think there seems to have been an acceptance from the Bombers that playing Sharp in the forward line probably isn't doing much for him.
Well, his weakness on the whiteboard did say that he's an inside mid playing forward, so maybe they've listened to that and they'll look at that. And
I said to you during the pre-season, or at least early in the year, that Andy McGrath had said to me that he'd been really impressed by how Sharp had embraced the half-forward role.
Yeah, yep.
But I just think it hasn't converted. Like, he kicked a goal in round one, and I think it's clear he's a good player, and he's got some footy IQ and some nous, and I think they would like to explore that, playing him at least a little bit more in his proper position.
Yep, let's hope that turns out all right. And I'm looking forward to Archie Roberts and Jacob Farrow doing their thing in the back line against the Giants. Let's look to Saturday night. We're going to Darwin for Gold Coast and St Kilda. So Jepson comes in for the Suns with Closey suspended, and Darcy Wilson's back in for the Saints. Dan Butler's out injured there. This one might just... Well, we'll be watching it, we'll be taking it in, but we're probably not buying into anyone out of this week for either side here. Probably the key thing is that Witts is still not there for the Suns, so Ned Moyle will keep rocking and rolling in the ruck. And, yeah, we'll just be watching and seeing. I don't think you're whacking any captaincy on a game up here. Do you have those little stresses about Darwin games as well?
100%. Yeah, I think in those sort of conditions, the good players, sort of the cream rises to the top. That would be my view. And I think you only have to look back to the Fiorini and Atkins times when they were knocking out 20s in Darwin to show that's exactly what happened. So I still think Petrarca and Tuke Miller and those guys will score well. I just don't think I think we got to the point where we're probably not trading into those guys because of the early buy. So, and in terms of St Kilda investments, most of us have got Naz and Sinclair and Flanders, and I think we're just rolling with those guys.
And then the other one there, Rowan Marshall could be on the radar for what he might be doing because I guess the question is, have they now worked out that ruck combo? I wouldn't want to be going into this game for that one. Like if it was a much more favourable matchup in the sense of not in a slippery Darwin, it might be okay to do, but I think that's probably enough for me to say no.
No, it's not the week for Big Row. You can wait another week.
Geelong are playing against Collingwood as Pendles comes back into the Pies team to equal the game's record with Jeremy Howe and Beau McCreery. Perryman's out injured and Parker and Hayes have been omitted. Mitch Edwards has been managed out of the ruck, so they bring Reece Stanley back in there for the Cats. You heading down there, what are you going to learn? Are you going to ask some questions about Brian Myers and what his story is for all the draft owners that thought he was done and maybe even dropped to free agents, and is he any chance to be playing again?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw Billy Brownless spoke about Brian Myers and sort of inferred that Brian didn't want to scan. So I think that's something that needs to be explored a bit more. But like Chris was, I don't know if you saw his presser last week, he didn't want to talk about Myers' situation at all. So I think it's going to be difficult for us to get any clarity. And we're not allowed into training. So
really? Yeah.
This is quite unusual, but I think worth noting, Geelong have not allowed any time this week for cameras and reporters to be at training. And I'm fairly certain that is in violation of AFL rules.
Right.
I think you have to allow at least a 15-minute window for media every week.
Are you going to get on your high horse about that, or are you a bit more passive in that?
Well, I think it's like I've been around long enough and dealt with Geelong enough to know that like it's probably not something that's worth making a big fuss over. But it's just been noted.
Yeah. Yep. Good. So in this one, I don't even really know what we're doing here. Nick Dacos should be all right, but will he cop that attention? Of course he will, but you're probably not trading into it. I don't think you're vice-captaining him, but I think Bailey Smith is someone that should rack up in this game off the back of that 70 last week.
I think quite simply that they probably don't really have the matchup to go with him, particularly with Perryman out of the team. And honestly, if Perryman's hamstring hadn't have gone last week, then it definitely would have gone this week if he tried to chase Baz around.
Yep. All right, let's move into Sunday games. We've got two of those. 1:10 is Melbourne and West Coast, your Eagles. We see Myercheck out injured for the D's, and into the squad we've got my man Jake Bowie back in there with Menzies, Wakefield, Jed Adams and Kentfield also into the squad. We might see Kentfield debut, probably not, but for the Eagles they have said goodbye and omitted Hewitt and Schoenberg. Matt Owies out injured. Into the squad we've got Harry Edwards back at full back, which is great. Harvey Johnson, Clay Hall, Bo Allen, Jack Williams and Jack Hutchison. Bit of sauce. I think Clay Hall might be in to do a little bit of a running with Cozzy Pickett, apparently.
Interesting.
So that
I was going to say that Cozzy looked like a guy that you could put the C on this week. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I think so
I like
too.
that from Minnie. Yeah, that's good by Minnie.
Yeah, so that's so apparently he's in. So when we see the 5 o'clock teams, we'll see that will be trimmed to that. So yeah. Interesting. Anyway, so they probably want to be doing something anyway. We're seeing what Cozzy is doing. He's just amazing. But in saying that, you want to be doing something. Whether it's successful or not is probably the other question.
Well, it's about limiting.
Yep.
If West Coast allowed Cozzy to run around, he probably ends up with 35 and 4 goals. So you've got to do something. He can fight through a tag, Cozzy, because he's so powerful and quick, and his assets are well known. He's going to have a good game, but if he's being tagged closely by Clay Hall, then he's probably not going to absolutely tear it apart.
Max Gawn, he's been a big question. Saved himself last week, finished well. I think when the game was on the line, they knew they had to put big Maxi in the ruck doing his thing. What do you reckon there? Where are we at with Max?
Yeah, I mean, as a tortured owner, I just think all we can do is just ride it out and hope for the best. Yeah. I hated that Max said publicly that Heath is a great centre bounce ruckman, because Max Gawn has been one of the great centre bounce ruckmen of like the history of ruckman. Yeah. So it seems like a bit silly to take himself out of that situation. It doesn't matter this week because they're playing West Coast.
Yeah, that's right.
Like this is a throwaway ruck game. It's a throwaway ruck game. So he'll probably still score well.
Hopefully we'll see something from Jack Steele this week. He's had a couple of down weeks last week, the worst of them. But Tom Sparrow's probably doing the man in the midfield. Would you be happy to go into him and buy into Sparrow, despite, because he has been good, his price has shot up. So would he be someone that you would consider at $822K with the forward status?
Yeah, interesting one, isn't it? Like, I would say there's a fair portion of the comp that have Cook at F6. And I just don't think I don't know if you need to upgrade that spot. I think I'd be going elsewhere with my money. But, interesting one, isn't it? Sparrow has had a great season. He's had a contract. It's sort of all lining up for him with the midfield role.
He's getting the
to
clock.
Have a good year.
Yeah.
So I don't he's not going to let you down. Just a question of if you think that's worth where you're spending your money.
And last game of the round is Richmond against Adelaide. So Prestia is out injured. Coming in, Samson Ryan, Luke Traynor, Noah Roberts-Thompson and Tim Taranto. You'd say that Taranto is a lock in there for the Prestia switch. And then for the Crows, Jordan Butts and Tex Walker are both out injured, with Murray, Nankervis, Marley and Dowling in, with Jordan Dawson definitely back into the team this week. So let's go. Samuel Cumming. We've got some clarity this morning, or is it clarity, or is this just the line that we're hearing?
Yes, Adam Uze this morning said that the plan is for Sam to play as much of the season as possible, if not the entire year. Um, yesterday, their CEO, Shane Dunn,
Yep.
He did not say sooner rather than later. That was incorrect, that
Right.
reporting by the random fan.
Yeah.
But he said that he will need shoulder surgery. So the club said to me yesterday that at the moment everything is fine.
Yep.
But if he got a massive hit on that shoulder and something went wrong,
They'd play a safe game.
then I think that they would shut him down. So if Jordan Dawson or Ben Keys runs through him on Sunday
Yeah.
and hurts his shoulder, then that could be done. Could be curtains. So he is more susceptible than, the average Joe player that you're bringing in to have to be shut down and go for surgery. So that's the risk that it carries. But also, we've got some clarity from the coach today that they want to keep playing him. And obviously they're in a situation right now, as you know, with their injury list where they can't really
Exactly, and that's it.
To lose him.
What were they? Their squad of 26 here came from 27 players.
Yeah. So, I actually sort of reversed the trade to have him into my team last night,
Right.
just because of the uncertainty. But I am still considering doing the coming move. I just sort of need some time to work through it. Ultimately, I think Warnie, every player that we bring in is at risk.
Totally. Yep.
And Cumming is probably slightly elevated, but also, he was a guy that we were looking to bring in for 6 to 8 to 10 weeks to make money and then trade out anyway. So
the flip side is that we're not going to see, hopefully not going to see him omitted as well. Like, that's the thing. Like, his risk isn't there in that side of things like any other rookie that we might be touching at the moment. So, yeah, it's a lock. I think you just do it is sort of where I'm at with that one now. I think with that little bit of news, I probably would have stuck with it anyway. It's interesting that a lot of the detectives out there, doing the maths on the mid-season draft and opening up that list spot and what that would be, which is awesome. I love that sort of content where people are going, yep, this needs to happen here, so his surgery would have to happen before this. But you might as well.
There was a lot of that.
You might as well.
There was a lot of that yesterday, talking about, if he plays 3 more weeks and then mid-season draft and blah blah blah, get to the buys, all that stuff. Like a lot of like detective work without any information.
Yep.
But yeah, I think they've got so many injuries that if they don't need Sam Cumming to be shut down.
That's right. And
to
games
get the people they want.
Games into him is going to be important. I think that's the other side of it, and especially getting a nice opportunity with the role because he has been named on the ball again there. So out of this too, I think, mentioned there before that old mate, the Cook monster, he's just going to be fine to keep rolling with. I think at your F6, he's probably one of those ones that you could keep going to the buy. That 90 now sits in his rolling average, and he's been able to do enough. So if you've got that, you roll with that. Otherwise, I don't know if there's anything else you've got out of this game.
No, Taranto's back. I think I had a decent week on Goat Fantasy. I think I was first with Taranto. I was first with Butterick. So most of my stuff, most of my work this week has been fairly successful. But yeah, I don't think there's much in this game really. Like, we know Richmond are a buy team, but I think Taranto is someone a real budget option that we could be looking at in a few weeks potentially. If he starts playing good footy again, because he's got that low score baked in, and he might be someone who can get us through the buys. But I think other than that, we're not really too interested.
It's an interesting thing. You've got a lot of these players that may, possibly be those. We've got the McCluggage one at the low 800s. We might see Taranto there. So you've got guys that could be an easy up from one of those rookies that you've got. So interesting ones to watch, I suppose, especially with that good buy. So there we are. Your trades then. What do you reckon you'll sit? Will you get coming back in, and what will the other side of that look like?
Yeah, so I'm just debating a double downgrade this week. And
who'd be the other one then? Who would be your other player?
Well, Bodie Ryan's in.
Oh, so you've done that. Sorry, you have done that. Yep.
Yeah. So, you actually sort of talked me into it, to be honest.
No, I'm sorry about that. My head was...
No, but I think there's a world where I'm actually okay with avoiding the sort of mid-priced player, and it will allow me to bring in like a big boy premium next week. And I think that's not a bad place for me to be, because I'm definitely a premium or two short on what a lot of teams are doing. So that's where I'm sort of weighing up the math of, well, if next week I play Caldwell, Jai Sarong, and a Bailey Smith, does that net me more points than McCluggage, Anderson, and whoever? So I think that's the sort of method I'm working to. So that there's a possible double downgrade, which is something I really wanted to do. The Caldwell injury sort of threw a bit of spanner in the works, but I'm considering whether I just cut my losses with Caldwell in terms of, and actually no, it's not cutting my losses. It's basically saying he's been so bad, surely he's going to get better, and maybe I need to hold on and ride that wave back up, which is a very optimistic viewpoint.
I like it. Glass half full.
It is glass half full, and maybe it's silly, maybe it's a bit stupid, but anyway, that's where I've landed. What about you?
So I'll go the Newman move basically from Sarong, and then the other move will be getting in Dyson Sharp, hoping that he gets that forward status. So I've done some maths on it. Basically, if he plays 100% midfield from now for the next 3 weeks after the post-round 11 position changes, he gets to 33% as a forward. Obviously, There's a bit of stuff in there with the game length and all that changes things, but I think it's a pretty safe play to think that he's going to get the forward status, and so therefore that will be handy for that round 12 buys one, but hopefully through those buys. And I'm just hoping now that he does get that midfield clock that gives him enough. If he can be a 40% CBA guy, I'll be quite happy with that off the back of that big one last week.
Yeah, I think that's a smart play. And geez, it'll be nice to have Sharp and Murdoch and a few of those blokes in your forward line around 12 just to cover off.
That's right.
The absentees that we have.
Jagger could be close enough to it as well. That's probably the upshot of Hewitt being in there for the Blues, that he might even be a chance to keep maintaining that forward status, because I think he's quite borderline at the moment. I think it's about 36% or so. So, yeah, it'll just give us that flexibility. The sad thing is, though, our benches are probably starting to look a little bit dire, part of the midfield, with defenders and forwards a little bit, which is a slight worry as we're moving forward to here. But anyway, this is what this game is. We are given frustrations all the time, but hopefully your Bodie Ryan can stay in there next week, and that'll turn into a nice little D7 for you.
Yeah, we'll see. And just an update quickly before we finish on the roller coaster that was me losing Rosie in that backline position. Another negative week. Colby to Archie Roberts cost me 5 points.
You listen to Calvin too much there, but I think it's probably the right call long term. I think we could have a good Archie one this week. VC.
Hope so. All right, mate. It's been fun.
Legend, have fun in G-Town, and we'll be tuning into AFL tonight, and we'll also be sticking with all the GOAT fantasy news on X and Instagram and all around the place. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, bro.